People who knew men caught on to catch a predator before the show. What were they like? I went to school with Rob Klein. From what I can remember of him was that he was quiet and kept to himself. He never did anything to label himself a creep. His excuse for showing up has to be one of the worst. Rob said he showed up to let the 13-year-old girl know he wasn't going to be able to hang out after making the 2-hour drive there. He also throws his brother under the bus for the CP that is on his computer. Ah, stunning. Remember the fine young lad who got caught not once, but twice? Went to my high school. He and I weren't friends but did share a few classes. I do remember him as someone I would have avoided interacting with on account of his lazy demeanor and poor attitude. Then again, I'm sure there's a number of my graduating class and otherwise who'd happily say they'd avoid interacting with me. I didn't know the person directly, but I worked at a company that had an employee caught on the show. This was particularly problematic, as the company was Nickelodeon Animation. Everyone who knew the guy was actually pretty shocked. It was particularly rough for his girlfriend at the time, as she also worked at the studio, so there was no hiding from it. For their part, Nickelodeon instituted rigorous background checks for every new employee after the incident, with zero tolerance for any misdeeds involving children. Those background checks are what keeps this lore alive though, as the process is much more intensive than any other studio. Dan Scheider. To be clear, Dan was not the one caught on the show and has never had anything officially or legally come out, but the dude was creepy as fuck. I didn't know the guy before the show, but after. This was over a decade ago, back in 2008 or 2009. I was on a dating website and was talking to a guy that claimed to be a doctor. I thought it was very unusual that this doctor, Maurice Wolin, had so much free time throughout the day to text me so frequently. Texting back then was a bit time consuming with flip phones. Was also begging me to meet up with him and telling me he wanted to shower me with all these gifts. He seemed a bit arrogant and pompous to me, in the way he would brag about his wealth and cars. I was getting suspicious of the guy and reverse searched his phone number. I found out he gave me a fake name, and after getting his real name, I saw all the articles online and saw the guy was on to catch a predator. I couldn't believe what I was seeing and asked him to send me a new selfie. Sure enough, it was definitely him. I ghosted him and blocked his number and reported his profile to Plenty of Fish and told them he was on to catch a predator. Just really glad I never met up with him. Be careful out there, everyone. Oh, I can actually answer this one. He legit was always trying to sleep with men that were way too young for him, albeit just barely legal, and we made jokes all the time to him about how he was going to wind up on that show. We literally called him Herbert. It was the opposite of he was the last person I would suspect situation. Did he end up getting convicted? I read somewhere that only like a quarter or a third of the people that get caught on that show actually end up with a conviction. I'm not totally sure how things wound up for him, as this revelation seemed like the opportunity I'd been looking for to distance myself from him. He definitely got arrested. He's definitely a registered sex offender now, but I don't think he went to prison, or if he did it couldn't have been for very long. I knew the cop from, I think Florala, Alabama, that was arrested on the show. He had guns and rope in his vehicle when he went to meet the girl. Super creepy stuff. When he was a sheriff's deputy in Florida, he would come into my job frequently. So, I didn't know him on a personal level, but I did talk to him on a regular basis. He was a really nice, respectful guy. He seemed to be a good cop too. I was shocked when I saw the episode. You never really know what goes on in someone's bedroom. Here is part of the episode. Oh my god, this guy got no time. He obviously has done this before. He has a chainsaw, tarp, rope and a boat anchor in his car with him. Shockingly, upon searching his van, they found a large array of guns, plus one revolver in his pocket that was loaded and cocked, along with an assault rifle on the passenger seat, loaded and primed. Even more shocking, and this was not covered in the Dateline story, he had all the materials for a body dump: a chainsaw, tarp, ropes, and a boat anchor. Holy shit. Yes, Matty Nash. He was creepy and kept trying to get me to go to Burning Man. When I told him I didn't think that was a good idea because I had a 10-year-old kid at the time, he said I should bring my kid. Now, I don't think he was interested in my kid at all, but I did tell him I thought that would be super creepy to bring a kid to Burning Man with a bunch of people on ecstasy. This was in 2001. He came over to my house under the guise of talking business and then put the moves on me. I turned him down and sent him home to his wife. That was likely a much closer encounter than you think with your kid. Predators often get the adults around the children to trust them first and then make their move. Hooking up with the parent is a common way. It's so textbook that it's even in the novel Lolita. Scary stuff. Glad you rejected him and nothing ever came of your encounter with him. I'm pretty late to the game, but my husband worked with or was good friends with one of the men on the first ever episode. We were all in our late 20s, he was a highly educated, well-liked guy, he was nice, funny as hell. We were all shocked. He got busted trying to sleep with a 12 or 14-year-old girl. He got a good lawyer, and so that To Catch a Predator didn't show the video of him getting busted, only a photo that he shared in the chat with who he thought was the young girl. We read the chat log between him and the girl, it was disgusting. He called my husband one time after the show aired to say that this was the first time he did anything like this, and he got caught up in the taboo nature of it. Never spoke to him again. Edit. My husband and I realized after the show aired in the fall, that we saw E the day after he got busted. I believe it was August when he got busted. We accidentally ran into him, and got a drink to chat for a bit. When we parted, I specifically remember asking my husband if he thought E was behaving strangely. E was super jumpy, not like himself at all. It is strange to realize that E continued to work and hang out with my husband and our friends for the months between getting busted and the show going on air. I'm a lawyer. I worked closely on a case with another lawyer who later was caught trying to have sex with an underage girl who was really a cop. He was married and had kids and was the nicest guy. Very earnest and dedicated to the cause, trying to make the world a better place. There were zero signs he would do something like that. It was a shock when it came out. It really shows that it could be anyone who does this type of thing. There aren't necessarily signs you would see that would tip you off that your coworker or neighbor or acquaintance is interested in underage girls. My cousin wasn't on the show but was caught in a similar situation where he was texting a young girl and law enforcement officers took over her phone and set up a meeting with him. He's been in the pen for close to 10 years and up for parole soon. His daughter and stepdaughter have filed SA charges against him, so hopefully he'll never get out. Growing up he was a complete weirdo who picked his nose and ate it in middle school and high school. Edit. The young girl was his daughter's friend, so he knew she was only 14 and he had sent naked pics. He showed up to her house with candy. I don't know anyone from the show, but I was very close to my father, who is a predator. Middle-aged geeky dude, had 2 daughters, I was 18, my sibling 20 at the time of arrest, bit socially awkward but known as a really kind guy. Always generous with his time, worked at a community center helping underprivileged kids learn how to use computers. Yeah, turns out he was molesting at least 2 girls from there, 4 and 8, and hosting a CP ring from the center's server. No one suspected it, he loved kids, but that's cause he had 2, right? He'd fix everyone's computers for free and help them get into work. Really great upstanding citizen. He got 16 years and everyone else got a lifetime of trust issues and trauma. That sounds scarily close to my father, but I'm the youngest and he didn't get the long in jail. How do you cope with knowing what he did? I struggle with it a lot and try not to think about it. It's weird trying to reconcile the person I loved as a kid with the predator who hurt other little kids like me. I think for me the hardest part is knowing that I was first and struggling with the guilt of, if I had told someone, those other kids wouldn't have been hurt. But in a more general sense, you just have to keep reminding yourself that you were never in charge of his actions. His choices were his own and sadly nothing you could have done would have changed it. Children hold no blame ever, involved or not. I've tried to reconcile with my father in the past and it went okay for a while, but in the end he didn't truly feel guilt because he couldn't wrap his head around how much trauma he caused. And that's not my burden to bear. It's not my job to teach him anything or help him rehabilitate. He's a grown adult and if he truly wants to change he needs to do that himself. Alright. I actually knew a guy who ended up getting caught on To Catch a Predator. We were not super close or anything, but we took a few classes together and had labs together. To give you some time context, I would have met him originally in like 2001 or 2002. It was my senior year in high school, but I was taking a community college physics class. He was 1 year older than me, having just graduated the year early. He was born in '83, I was born in '84. I didn't really get to know him very much in that course, but I did in a later that I was taking in like late 2002 or early 2003. I knew him from physics classes, nothing else. I remember we were in the same lab group, so we were spending 3 to 4 hours at a time working on some lab project. He was an immigrant from India, and a rather small man, very thin and fairly short. He was a Sikh and kept his hair covered. His English was pretty good though. You can just sort of tell, This guy was the type of guy who had no luck with girls, like zero, which is really common for a lot of dudes at this age though, but this was like, worst case scenario for a guy. He had no attention of any kind from women. And we are in a physics class, awkward with girls probably explains the majority of young guys in that class at that time in our lives. One time he wanted to teach me a lesson about never meeting girls online. He told me a story about how his friend, figure similar situation, was trying to meet girls online and then he met this one. She looked a little chubby in her face in her picture, but then he went to go meet her at the amusement park. And to his horror, it was a very obese woman. His friend had no idea on how to bail, so he just sort of went along with it. They went and did some rides, then they got on the roller coaster, where when the ride ended she got stuck, and the ride operator was unable to help her, so they had to shut it down, call in a technician who had to disassemble the ride to get her out. As he was telling me this story he was laughing harder and harder. He then proceeded to point to an obese woman in the class and he whispers to me, "And let me tell you my friend, it was her right over there," and he then erupted into laughter. And that, my friend, is why you do not want to meet women online, because you never know what you could get yourself into. I remember the class he told me this joke in, and I remember taking it in spring of 2003, so I would have been like 18 or had just turned 19. That was the last class I took with him, but I do recall seeing him in the summer of 2004, at a different school, when I was waiting for a ride home, in a parking lot for about a minute or two. Basically just said hello, asked what we are doing at the place, then sort of just left. We were never online buddies, MySpace friends, or did anything in any social context outside of a classroom or lab. No lunch, no party, nothing. He ended up getting busted on to catch a predator in January of 2006. I don't recall seeing the episode until 2007 or so. I remember the story he told me about meeting women online. I honestly have the hunch that the Sting was the first person that was ever talking to him sexually. Like if he said he has never done such a thing, I believe it. The guy was an absolute max level incel long before the incel movement. I did read the chat log he had with the decoy and it was pretty sick though. The dude was definitely fucked up. If you watch the show, he was the guy who claimed to be into academics and know about the law when trying to talk to Chris Hansen. That was definitely the vibe I remember from in class. I fortunately don't know any predators, but I did work with a young woman who had worked on the show. She did the post-production voiceovers for the catfishing texts between the detectives and the predators. She was the voice of the non-existent teen girl. Like the, "Oh, I don't know much about sex. I'm only 13 lol" stuff. Apparently she was a production assistant or intern at the production office, and one of the producers was like, "We need somebody with a young sounding voice. You, say something," and she did, and he was like, "Perfect, come with me," and she recorded all the dialogue. Right after she told a bunch of us at work, this was a couple years later at a different job, I went home that night and watched an episode and could tell it absolutely was her voice. Hilarious. So in high school we had a shop teacher, if I recall correctly, stand-up guy, super nice to everyone. I always got a weird vibe with how people talked about him, but the story was that he had an extra room in his house. For years or over a decade he would take the kids that were in trouble, down and out / fighting with the law or fighting with their parents, and give them a place to stay and get back on their feet. This had been going on well before I started going there. So as you can imagine, there had been a couple accusations against him. Kids he targeted were always already in trouble to begin with, so nothing held up. Fast forward to 2001 grade 9 English class one day. Class starts and apparently he had been arrested on accusations on the weekend. Our English teacher comes in to start class completely broken down in tears, goes on a giant tirade about how disgusting it is that false accusations can ruin a good man's career, and that we will have a substitute because her and an army of other teachers / admin / staff are going down to City Hall to protest and stand up for him. This went on for a few days. Eventually the charges were dropped and dismissed. There was even a front page news article that more or less discredited the kid and implied he was being falsely accused. He got off and kept his job. Fast forward a few years later after I graduate, and sure enough he gets caught completely red-handed. Turns out for over 10+ years he was getting away with this shit while the school defended him at every turn. When he finally got arrested, caught, and convicted, the news article was literally half a paragraph printed in the backside of the paper in the courts section, not even a photo. I would not be at all shocked if more admin or staff were involved than just him. I feel so bad for all those kids who were brave enough to come forward over the years just to have an entire school administration and justice system turn against them. My mom used to know one of the guys, said he was always a nice guy and quick with a joke. She said she was not really surprised to see him where he was when the show was on television. Yep, she had a lot of good things to say about Chris Hansen. I was roommates with a person on the show for a bit. His name was Dave and he was one of the few people they let go when they started having the sheriff's department waiting outside. Felt bad for the guy, completely gullible and too nice of a dude. It was the Riverside, California episode where two really young guys show up at the house. Basically my buddy was out in Cali visiting a friend that told him that he needed to detour to drop in on this girl he's been chatting with. No age was mentioned and it's not like he could say no as the only car they had was his friend's in California's car. So he's like, sure, I'm down to tag along, immediately regretting the decision when Chris Hansen pops out. They only interviewed his friend and he just had to stand there nervously guzzling a Rockstar waiting for it to be over. Funnily when Chris told them they could go they thought they were in the clear and were giggling on the way out until a bunch of cops in tactical gear jumped them in the driveway lol. Like I said, they let him go with no issues as he never had contact with the girl and had only been in state for less than 24 hours. Really sucked though cause when the episodes were still available online that whole episode had his face as the thumbnail. Edit, wow, this blew up lol. To be fair I didn't know him till well after this episode, so not a super fit for the criteria of the post. Met him at work and became friends, later was in a situation where I needed a new place to stay and like I've said earlier he was a super nice guy. I remember when my now wife and I were hanging out with him and he out of the blue says, "I've been on TV, wanna see?" and whips out the tape of the episode. My wife and I have been to Catch a Predator fans since it came out and I always thought that Dave looked familiar. We were shocked when it became apparent why lol. Funny part is when the episode was being filmed we were living not too far from it in Yorba Linda, California, but didn't meet Dave till probably 5 years later after we moved to Utah. For any follow-up requests, I haven't spoken to Dave in probably 10 years or more. As far as I know Sebastian did actually get charged and convicted, however, he did get much needed help. They were both foster kids together for a long time, and while I do not give passes on pedos, Sebastian's experiences growing up if I recall correctly were horrific, so I hope he is in a better place now. The last I had heard from Dave after we moved apart was he went down to Mexico for a bit, said he got railroaded to work as a coyote by the local cartel and his car was being held to make him cooperate. Was a really nice eclipse back in the day. Not sure how much if this is true, but again this guy wasn't a good liar and super naive. Edit 2, as far as release forms, as stated in another comment as far as I remember he had a bunch of paperwork shoved at him while dealing with the cops and just signed shit to get out of there. Later he was advised it would be a long time and expensive to try and fight it. With the giggling, I'm sure it was due to stress relief and no ulterior motive were there. Dude just got out of an oh shit moment and probably hadn't had time to process what happened with his friend. Cut him a little slack.